Compression is tricky, compression can be tricky, but once you get it, it will stick. When you're watching a film or playing a video game, or maybe even just listening to music through speakers, you might be in an environment that's particularly quiet, so you'll be conscious of how loud the volume is. In a film, you've got dialogue scenes. They're quite quiet, they're often important, so you might find yourself turning the volume up just to make sure you can hear what they're saying. Before you know it, you could be thrown into an action scene. There could be explosions, loud music, orchestra scores, and that means the volume level has just shot up and it suddenly feels way too loud. So you grab the remote and turn the volume down a bit. So this action of reacting to a volume level and then making a decision on turning that up or down is basically all a compressor is doing. Just trying to find a good average volume based on the criteria that's been set. Welcome back, audio family. I hope that example gave you a basic introduction to what a compressor is doing. All it is fundamentally turning volume levels up or down based on criteria that you've given it. The great thing about Logic compressors is that they have a graph view which kind of demonstrates exactly what the compressor is doing as you change the settings. So let's have a look at that, and hopefully by the end of this video you'll understand what you're doing with a compressor. One of the first things you need to know is what's the threshold. What volume level or what decibels are considered too loud? This is the point at which you'll make a decision to start turning things down. The second criteria is the ratio. How much do you want this volume turned down by? If we set a ratio of 2 to 1, every time the audio signal goes above our threshold, we're going to half that. So we're reducing the volume level by a ratio of 2 to 1 only when it crosses the threshold. For beginners, it's worth noting that in the world of audio, we measure loudness in decibels, which are often displayed as negative numbers, with 0 being the loudest. So in the case of this compressor, we have a range between -50 to 0 for our threshold. This is the equivalent to the example I gave of every time the TV gets too loud, you turn the volume down, except this time we've been told to turn the volume down by a half. So what about the quiet parts? This is where I introduce you to the gain. Sometimes it's labeled makeup gain because it's compensating for the overall volume that's been brought down, so you're going to have to bring some of that back so that the relative volume of everything is the same as it was previously. When you apply these settings correctly, the average volume of everything will feel louder. However, you've actually gained back a few decibels, known as headroom, within your mix. If we look at the Logic compressor, we can see what our original input volume was compared to the output after compression. Some compressors have an auto gain feature. I normally turn this off because the auto gain tends to give you back too much and just makes things louder, which isn't necessarily better. But if you know what you're doing, it is better to turn the auto gain off and just handle that compensation yourself. As you can see, there's a couple more things that we need to take into consideration. We know what our threshold is. We know how much we want to turn things down by. But now we need to think about how quickly do we want to turn things down? At what speed do you want to start reducing the volume levels? This will be our attack dial. After you've reduced this volume, at what speed do you want to bring the volume back up or start applying makeup gain? This will be your release knob. So here we've got a drum channel. Percussion in general requires fast reactions, otherwise you'll completely miss the signal. The sounds are naturally short, have sharp peaks, and require fast compression settings. I will now set an extreme threshold and stronger ratio so you can see how much harder the compressor works. Now watch as I adjust the attack time. When we have a slow attack, we miss a lot of audio peaks because the reaction time is too slow. There are times where you might intentionally want a slow attack. The best part of a kick or a snare is usually at the start, so you might want to let a bit of that slip through before bringing the volume down. Now let's tweak the release. I'm going to set a very slow release. As you can see, the audio signal is completely squashed now because we're very slow at returning back to the original volume. The indicators telling us to turn things down are coming in way quicker than our ability to turn the volume levels back up. We can now take a look at a vocal track.
Never let you go, never let you go.
It would be more common to find slower attack release settings with vocals because vocals by nature are also quite slow and they're sustained for much longer.
Never let you go, never let you go, never let you go.
You can encounter some problems if you start throwing really fast reactions on vocals because it will distort the sound. If you're singing a long note and holding that note and the compressor just quickly whacks the volume level or crushes the dynamics of that, it can create some distortion.
Never let you go, never let you go. Never let you go, never let you go. Never let you go, never let you go. Never let you go, never let you go.
If you're typically looking for a more natural vocal, you want to be a little bit softer with your settings when you're choosing them on the compressor.
Never let you go, never let you go. Never let you go, never let you go. Never let you go, never let you go.
So why do we do any of this? In my case, it evens out the levels so that there's no harsh surprises in the dynamics. The equivalent of this would be watching a film at really loud volume because people are whispering, and then all of a sudden a car explodes and loud music starts and you've just woken up the baby. Don't want bad surprises. In terms of music, it also raises the average volume level so that things can cut through the mix. And the third thing would be sometimes compressors can add color and tone to your mix. And this would be more the case if you're using a vintage compressor such as the Fairchild. Just running audio signals through that gear gave it a special sound or a nostalgic sound, which people are still looking for today. We've got very good replications of that in our VST software instruments, and they also have less dials and options. Not all of them will have the attack and release knob there because they're way more primitive. To be honest, I think that's it for the basics. Let me know in the comments if you'd like me to go into more detail. We can look at parallel compression, we can look at sidechain compression, and gain more understanding on other ways that these things can be used. But in terms of the fundamentals and the basics, I think you've got it. It's a volume knob, it turns things up and down, and you tell it where and when to do that, how fast to do that, and when to reset things. Also remember to like and subscribe, show your support for the channel, and I'll have more videos for you soon. Thank you.